Do y'all remember when Keurig machines were getting thrown off of buildings? Do you remember that? Do you remember when people were literally grabbing their Keurig coffee makers, just the most wasteful coffee products in life, and just chucking them off their ceilings, smashing them all over the place? Do you remember Gillette razors? They were flushing them down toilets. Nike, hey, who can forget Nike? Remember, they were grabbing Nike shoes and they were burning them outside. Yeah, they were doing that whole thing, burning their shoes. Speaking of learning, guess who won? Everyone's favorite philosopher. I'm going to be turning this on 125 because he speaks so incredibly slowly. It's not because he wants every single part of his speech to be like more pronounced. It's not because he's trying to make sure that he's a storyteller. It's because he speaks very slowly. So I'm just going to speed it up to 1.25, and here we go.
Hello and welcome back to No BS. Today we return to talking about one of our least favorite politicians, especially for the liberals.
That's 125. You barely notice it, do you? I bet none of you would have noticed. Had I not done anything, you would have been like, well, yeah, that's just a regular person talking.
Of course, talking about Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. She's a very famous up-and-coming liberal politician, a very socialist one at that, who basically wants to make our country the next Venezuela. But that's besides the point for today. Today, we're talking about a funny little story that has a certain company in America who has named AOC their Employee of the Month. This is a very funny story. It's not exactly what you might think, but to give you a little backstory before we get into it, essentially, earlier this year, there was a little controversy with the company called GOYA. GOYA makes food products, mainly authentic Mexican, Hispanic style food products. And GOYA had a relationship with Donald Trump that many did not appreciate.
Authentic.
Essentially, they were one of the few companies that publicly supported the president, kind of like the My Pillow company and a few other ones that came out, supported Trump. Some of their leaders met with the president, had a little rally with him. Things like that happened earlier this year. My Pillow was another one. GOYA was one. And with GOYA, it kind of upset people in a different way because, as I mentioned, GOYA makes this Hispanic food. It's actually a pretty big staple for many people in America and across the globe too. But here in America, liberals decided to start a boycott of GOYA because they associated with Trump. One in particular was AOC, as we mentioned. She was one of the ones saying she wouldn't shop for GOYA products anymore. And that actually led
AOC the liberal. AOC the liberal. Yeah, was not going to shop for authentic Mexican cuisine.
That actually led to a reversal. So when these liberals all boycotted the company, they actually ended up getting more people buying from them. So as they boycotted, Trump supporters and other people decided to buy more GOYA. I know I was buying GOYA at the time. I still buy GOYA now. I see it at the store and I'm like, hey, I might as well get these beans instead of these other beans. I might as well try this juice. They have lots of different products that are good. And yeah, so that's why GOYA named AOC Employee of the Month, because her little dramatic boycott caused them to make more money. So we'll get to the details, talk more about it soon, get you all the flavor and the interesting facts. But first, let's take a quick moment to check out our sponsor. As you can see by these pictures, these are celebrities using this teeth whitening product, and it really works great for these people. And these are people.
You gotta be kidding me. So GOYA is not the sponsor of this video. This is just a praise GOYA. All right. Well, you do you. Oh, he's put on the glasses. It's time for a lesson. Here we go.
So this is what we're talking about. This is a big number right there, by the way. That's a lot of extra money for the company, and they deserve it. They're a good company. They make great products, regardless of politics and who the supporters and the leaders of their company support. That really isn't the biggest deal, especially for a lot of people. Not everyone is hyper political like AOC, like a lot of us on this channel. We're pretty political.
Oh, you're hyper political, are you, sir? Yes, you can tell. This is definitely the costume of a hyper political man beast. In the meantime, did any of you ever know what the fuck GOYA was before any of this? Were you ever like, oh yes, GOYA beans, my saviors? I love that. Like, I heard so much about this company, about these cans, about these beans within the past. Like, I don't know. It was a very concentrated little moment of time, and then all of a sudden it seemed to have vanished again. Oh, everyone is very well. Oh, everyone is knowledgeable to GOYA. Well, maybe this is a border thing. Maybe this is what separates the Canadian and the American border, because I don't have a huge amount of GOYA products in my shelves.
I'm seemingly very political because of shows like this, but in actuality, I just like to talk about this stuff as a job for fun, and I find it interesting. But day to day, I'm not super into politics. It's not like running my life or ruining my days. But
bombshell. Wow. Floored.
Point is, this Goya stuff, it backfired. AOC has egg on her face, or maybe we should say she has rice on her face, or beans, whatever kind of Goya product you choose. And it's just very funny because everything she does, she fails at. She's one of the worst politicians ever, one of the most biased people.
I don't know. Were you failing at being racist or sexist there? or is it just a really bad joke? I can't tell.
Ever. Just a total airhead and a total joke. So it's fun to talk about it again. And let's read into the article and see what else happens. Goya CEO Robert told radio's Michael Berry show on Monday that New York rep AOC was named Employee of the Month after the company's sales spiked in response to the progressive Congresswoman's call for a boycott of its products earlier this year. When she boycotted us, our sales actually increased 1,000%. Uninu, I can't say that name, Uninu, I think, said on the show, which is syndicated on some 20 stations across the country. So we gave her an honorary. We never were able to hand it to her, but she got Employee of the Month for bringing attention to Goya and our adobo. That was the product that she said she wasn't going to get at Goya anymore. He noted that the boycott allowed Goya to reach so many new people while maintaining its base. Ocasio-Cortez's call came after Uninu declared at a White House event that the United States was blessed to have a leader like President Trump, who is a builder. Oh, look, it's the sound of me Googling how to make your own adobo. Ocasio-Cortez wrote to her 10 million followers on Twitter after social media backlash prompted boycott Goya. So there's the original tweet. This is the adobo thing she mentioned. We actually covered this back when it happened. This happened in July. And now it's coming back up again, kind of after the fact, after all this dust has settled. Goya is showing that they made more money and the boycott clearly didn't work. It had the opposite effect.
Yes.
And that really makes sense.
Yes,
I mean, you think about who we're dealing with and what's going on here. It actually makes a lot of sense because it's kind of like why they say get woke
AOC.
and you go broke. It's like the leftists are just toxic. They don't have this kind of driving force behind them. They think they could sway buyers and clients and customers when they really can't. They really don't have that kind of authority or anything like that. The people that follow them are not big spenders. Liberals and SJWs don't actually support products financially. That's the whole issue. That's the problem, is they think they're speaking to a lot of people, and sometimes they are. I mean, AOC does have 10 million followers, as they mentioned here, but the problem is there's billions of people on this planet. 330 million of them are in America. Most of them don't give a hoot about AOC. They don't even know who she is. And if she tells them to stop buying Goya because of some silly meeting the Goya leader had with Trump, I mean, no one's going to go for that. Even if it wasn't dramatic. I mean, all the guy said was he was blessed to have a leader like Trump as a builder. I mean, he can like Trump. Trump is a builder. He has started a lot of companies. He has done the whole starting companies, building them from the ground up, starting buildings, building them. So when the Goya leader says he's a builder and he's blessed, that's his own right. I mean, that's not anything offensive. This is a non-problem. Basically, he's just being attacked because AOC doesn't like Trump. She's got a little kind of chip on her shoulder about Republicans. So she goes after anyone who supports them. It shows the toxicity of politics now. It shows how if you don't agree with a liberal on every single little thing, they're going to come after you. They're going to come after your livelihood. They're going to try to
So, yeah, do y'all remember when Keurig machines were getting thrown off of buildings? Do you remember that? Do you remember when people were literally grabbing their Keurig coffee makers, just the most wasteful coffee products in life, and just chucking them off their ceilings, smashing them all over the place? Do you remember Gillette razors? They were flushing them down toilets. Nike, hey, who can forget Nike? Remember, they were grabbing Nike shoes and they were burning them outside. Yeah, they were doing that whole thing, burning their shoes to own the corporation.
I would let AOC ruin my life.
Protest your company, get you guys fired, get your company shut down. I mean, it is a brutal effort, and it is coming from some of the worst kinds of people, including AOC. Uninu told Barry that it was interesting to see AOC as one of the first people to boycott Goya and go against her own people, adding that she is naive when it comes to her support of policies like the Green New Deal. His latest comments come as Goya has doubled its production with an $80 million facility in Texas to meet increasing demand. Despite the success, Uninu told Fox Business's Maria in an interview last week that he is concerned for the nation. We're controlled by social media. Anything that doesn't go along with their agenda and narrative is not permissible, he said on Mornings with Maria. We've lost our coverage. We are the greatest country on earth, but we've lost the freedom and we have to get back to work. Other thing worth noting here is, right, this guy's totally right. He seems like a strong, smart, active businessman who cares about the country and his communities. He's a Hispanic man. This company is Hispanic owned and run. This is something the left should support. But the thing is, they're not really as much about minority.
Okay, so that's something maybe the liberals would support. Of course, the liberals do like performative wokeness, performative qualifications. Let's just say that. But the id poll, there's not really the id poll left. We're not looking for representation in corporations. We're not looking for more like, dictators, more CEOs, more caps, things like that. That's not like the be all end all for the left.
Because if you don't agree with them, they don't care about you. They don't care about black conservatives, Hispanic conservatives. Anybody that likes Trump is thrown out and you don't get help. But the problem is, it's like if you say all these black, brown, different minorities are all treated terrible and they have a horrible life, then that applies to the other ones you don't agree with too. Just because you can't just pick out the ones who agree with you. It doesn't make sense. It makes you look like you're making stuff up. You're lying. You're a hypocrite. You're full of crap. He lamented that politicians have blamed the coronavirus.
It sounds like the mic faded out a little bit at the end of that rant, but he's like, oh, we're just going to keep going with this. Too many things to list.
On Trump and weaponized it against the American worker. He also argued that politicians should be fired instead of millions of the restaurant industry who are unemployed due to COVID restrictions. They turn their weapons in a political year on the masses, he said. This is discrimination against the working class. We're not teaching our children. We're not working. This is a great point. This guy seems to be dialed in and knows what's going on. I would listen to him much more than I listen to AOC. This guy leads a billion-dollar company. He's been very successful at getting the company to lots of people, getting their products out there. He does lots of great work. He's active and in his communities. He's working with the president. What has AOC done? AOC is a puppet for the Democrats. She knows nothing. She won this small election in New York City by a landslide just because she's a Democrat who's a minority and female. I mean, she doesn't have anything going for her. She never did anything with her life. She hasn't accomplished anything in Congress. She promoted this silly Green New Deal that is just a total pipe dream and super failed, super cringe. And she just continues to embarrass herself. And I think this is a good kind of follow-up story to get out there to let people know that she doesn't have the power she thinks. She's not as strong or as smart or as popular or cool or effective as she claims. She's not getting things done. Her protests don't work. Her activism is fake. She's just trying to turn us into a socialist, communist country. She supports that stuff, and it's just bad and cringe. And the fact that she wanted to boycott Goya over something like
why are you putting this unrelated footage of this other woman on screen right now that has nothing to do with what you're talking about? What are you doing? What's going on here? She did do one thing. She became employee of the month at Goya. So you're lying. Although she did just release a cute video. I wouldn't mind seeing this. This is a good segue because this is a little bit more candy.
I've been seeing progressive officials around the world do this challenge where we try to squeeze in all of the accomplishments from the last 2 years in 2 or 3 minutes. And since I'm coming to the end of my first term in office, I thought we'd try to do the same. So 2 years in 2-ish minutes. So let's set the clock. Let's try to do it. Ready? All right, let's go. This term, we successfully passed legislation to move $5 million to treatment for opioid addiction with funds shifted from the DEA, $10 million in funds to clean up toxic bombardment sites in Vieques, Puerto Rico that were getting people sick. I repealed the Fair Cloth Amendment in the House, which paves the way for the U.S. to build more public housing for the first time in decades. Passed legislation in the House to ban funds going to the transfer of lethal military equipment to Bolivia. Introduced more amendments than 90% of freshman lawmakers in the House. I authored and introduced the Green New Deal with Senator Ed Markey and secured 115 House and Senate co-sponsors on it. Regional versions of the Green New Deal were also adopted by 10 local governments, including the state of New Mexico and cities of Austin, Los Angeles, New York City, Boston, and more. We unveiled the Green New Deal for public housing, which would invest up to $180 billion over 10 years and create up to 250,000 jobs per year nationwide. I authored the Just Society suite of bills, which would modernize the federal poverty standard, make immigrants eligible for social safety programs, require federal contractors to pay $15 an hour, strengthen tenant protections, and ease reentry.
Yo, before I finish this, I just got an idea. It just came to me based on listening to this. Well, what about a has mods, but we do one with AOC? What about like an AOC mods? I think that would be a good emote because she mad flexing right now, and it's pretty cool. These are some good accomplishments. She's one hell of an orator. I agree. That could take her a long way. AOC mods.
For formerly incarcerated citizens. I introduced the Loan Shark Prevention Act with Senator Sanders to cap credit card interest rates at 15%. I called for the bailout for taxi cab drivers targeted in predatory lending schemes and sought tougher oversight in New York City taxi medallion lending. We introduced the COVID-19 Funeral Assistance Act, which would help families get up to $10K in funeral expenses who lost loved ones during the pandemic. I co-sponsored 78 pieces of legislation that passed the House, 14 that were signed into law, and that's before we get to our investigations. During committee hearings, my question lines helped pressure Big Pharma into bringing down the price
that was my favorite part about AOC.
HIV transmission, exposed TransDigm, a defense contractor, into returning $16.1 million in price gouge profits to the public, pressured Facebook to fact-checking political advertising, and exposed Mark Zuckerberg's dinner parties with radical right-wing figures.
That was awesome.
We got President Trump's former lawyer, Michael Cohen, to state on the record that President Trump was engaging in tax fraud and to name other potential witnesses. We overturned the unjust citizenship question on the census. We stopped the deportation of whistleblowers from the Irwin County Detention Center and traveled to the border to expose abuse of immigrant families in detention and the inhumanity. of child separation. I was nominated twice in the Democracy Awards, which was the first time a member of Congress was recognized in 2 categories: at home in the Bronx and Queens. We helped over 1,000 constituents with VA, Social Security, immigration visas, and other federal services, attended over 600 events in the district, hosted 25 town halls, and when our community became the epicenter of the epicenter, we mobilized a full COVID response operation, including 200,000 community check-in calls, 80,000 meals to families in need, 100,000 masks to teachers, small businesses, and essential workers. We organized and launched a homework helpers program and recruited over 11,000 tutors to offer one-on-one help for kids in remote learning, raised $1.25 million for local organizations doing COVID relief, hosted 8 training sessions to teach over 10,000 people how to unionize their workplace, form mutual aid networks and childcare collectives during COVID, and more. We launched a multilingual outreach effort on the census, which brought in over $58 million to our district. On the presidential campaign, I co-chaired the Climate Unity Task Force with Secretary Kerry to help shape President-elect Biden's $2 trillion climate policy. We raised nearly $600,000 for grassroots organizations in Georgia and more than $1.5 million for progressives and swing district Democrats across the country. In my own race, I fended off over $10 million in corporate-backed attacks without taking a single cent from lobbyists, fossil fuel executives, or corporate money. We won, and I was honored to win re-election with nearly 72% of the vote in the highest turnout election that New York 14 has ever seen. Whew, okay, that's not everything we accomplished, but it's still a pretty good list. I ran over, and it would not have been, but none of this would have been possible without you all, your support, small dollar donations, your organizing. These accomplishments are not mine, they are all of ours. And so I thank you so very much. Happy holidays, and let's keep it going to the next year.
Pretty cool. And like that's one spirited sock dem in government. Imagine what could happen if we had a whole bunch of dem socks in positions of power. Oh yes, that's right. Oh god, that's wrong.
Hey, we want to mutual aid you to get some eyeballs on your work. So if you have a leftist YouTube channel or Twitch stream or something you want us to advertise, just send us a 20 to 30 second ad using the forums at weareserfs.com. We'll do our best to help you out. And please submit once per channel.
To our gods, Amrad, and Xander Forbes, we shall build temples in your honor. To our monarch, Tom Spiker, we live to do your bidding. To our lords, Jeffrey Lamb, Trevor R., Stephen, Nine Tails Cosmic Fox, Aunt Josephine, Poppy Nelson, Ryan Lubin, Jimothy K. Meeble Beeps Jr., we bow meekly for your pleasure. And to our Knights of the Round Table, Josh Mickelson, Dylan Veit, Zach Christensen, Todd Buckingham, Todd Lajeunesse, Political Puppy, Ali Menthal, Jimmy Big Nuts, Andreas Chitoro, Good Poon Hates Cops, That's Solid Poon Then, Dr. Zayas, Joppy, Violent Orchard, Sophie Baby, Jack Darko, Thomas Barrington, J. Fraser Cartwright, Goofalankius, Melissa Murphy, Nicholas Marks, Alexander Thaler, Ramon Acosta, and Ali Retta Jaffer. We salute you. Love you all. Peace.